Well, hey there, YouTube. I have mentioned Robert Blanchard before on this channel, most particularly in his design of the most successful tent of the 20th century, the Eureka Timberline. Probably more young men have slept underneath the nylon of a Timberline tent than any other tent ever made. It was a choice for the Boy Scouts. It was a choice for backpackers early on. It was the lightest weight tent when it first came out. It is simple, it is durable. The 4-man version is big enough for 4 men, which is unusual. Usually you have to subtract 1 off of the tent capacity they give you. We're wondering. Let me just say right now that I had a bit of an electrical problem with the big steel tent, and I do not have access to the internet. I had planned on having internet access when I shot this video to go ahead and double check some of my dates and times and things like that. I'll have to do that back at the cabin. I can't get to the internet right now. But Robert Blanchard, to my way of thinking, is the most significant tent designer of the 20th century. Now, people who come from my generation, the boomers, will tell you that it's Robert Blanchard's also ran, or something to that effect, and they'll talk about the guys at JanSport and North Face and all that, and the development of the dome tent and other similar tents. To which I say, none of those designs would have been possible had Robert Blanchard not put us on the path that he put us on when he designed the tent that's laying on the ground next to me. This is the Blanchard Draw-Tite. Blanchard patented it in, and I hope I get the date right, about 1958, 59, and they started marketing it in the 60s. Eureka, following it started its habit of marketing out or sending new designs to be labeled for other outlets. There are versions of the Draw-Tite tent that are branded to LL Bean and Eddie Bauer. But Eureka was the original manufacturer. They manufactured the tents that Bean and Bauer sold. And Blanchard designed it. And Blanchard was so proud of it, and I think he knew what he had when he had this design, that it was marketed as the Blanchard Draw-Tite. Now, prior to this tent, most tents could be put up either with an external frame or an internal frame. In other words, you could set up your wall tent by hanging it from trees and guying it off, or building a shear frame as an external frame. Or you could have a couple of tent poles and a ridge pole and put it up that way. Okay, this tent is the first tent of which I am aware that was designed from the outset as an external frame tent. And the first immediate change to tent design that the Draw-Tite brought about was family tents, umbrella tents, from the designs of the 1920s and the 1930s, suddenly got redone with external aluminum pole frames, thus freeing up a good deal of the space in the inside because there would be no center pole required. But the whole idea of placing a tent and having it stand up in tension was started by this tent. This tent, okay. In other words, previous tent designs, the tension needed to keep the tent on the ground and to keep it up is provided by external sources, guy wires, shear frames, internal frames, that kind of thing. The tension required to put this tent up is provided by the tent. This tent can be picked up and moved around, just like the timberline. If you know the timberline, you will see the DNA in this tent. Uh, the Drawtite blew the doors off the camping world, particularly the climbing world. Uh, this tent can be put up above tree line. That was the actual purpose of this tent. Versions of the Drawtite were used in South Polar expeditions. In 1961, Sir Edmund Hillary took Drawtite tents along with him in a expedition. He had climbed Everest just 5 years before, and he did another scientific expedition in Nepal where he brought along Drawtite tents. In 1963, the first American Everest expedition brought along a prototype nylon version of the Drawtite tent, which eventually became the Timberline, by the way. They brought that along in the 1963 attempt. You should read about that expedition, by the way. There is some very thrilling exploits that went on in that 1963 expedition. Jim Whittaker, I believe, led the expedition and summited Everest through the normal route, and then two other climbers went up the west face, bringing along a two-man nylon Drawtite tent, which was the last quarters they slept in before they went to the summit. And these guys went up a face of the mountain that only 17 others, I believe, have attempted, and 14 of them have died. Okay. These guys made it over the top, and not only did they make it over the top, they continued down the other side and managed to rescue two other climbers on the way. You should read about the 1963, or watch a video on the 1963 West Face expedition. Anyway, I'm blathering on. This is a tent I got off of eBay, fairly reasonable. It came in this very nice nylon duffel bag, which probably did not come with the tent. Got the tent, got a sack of stakes, which I believe are the guy lines for the front and back beaks, and a sack full of aluminum poles. Now, I did have the presence of mind after my experience with my Dicky Bird tent, and I'll link to that at the end of this video, and I found on the internet instructions for putting up the Drawtite tent. And as I said, going through these instructions, there's a whole lot of DNA in here with the Timberline. You can tell that the guy who designed the Timberline is the guy who designed this tent. What we're going to do now is I'm going to try to videotape putting this ding-dang thing up. We might be able to speed it up some. I don't know. Camera might be able to do it. Anyway, let's get started with that. You can see in this tent the influences from the 1920s and the 1930s. This frame could be put up using saplings cut from the forest and lashings. And you could put up a tent similar to it using a frame like this that would stand in tension, or at least be able to stand up when guyed off. But this thing, it's beautiful. It's lighter weight and less destructive to the environment than wood. It is repeatable every single time. Every single time you put this together, everything's going to be the same size, the same diameter, the same length, and it will achieve a frame of the same dimensions. So Robert Blanchard got his inspiration from the 1920s and 1930s, which is where he was a young man, and that's why I studied the 1920s and the 1930s. But this idea, this influence, the way things go together, all that changed from now on was the material. Canvas gets replaced by nylon. The rubberized floor, that gets replaced by heavier nylon with polyurethane coating. Aluminum gets replaced by smaller aluminum, then the aluminum arrow shafts, and then finally carbon fiber poles. Okay, but the idea starts here. You have a couple more sips of coffee, then we'll finish putting this tent up. Okay, I think the rest of this is going to be easier. Okay, we'll hook up these brass clips, and if you have ever put up a timber line, you will recognize the brass clips. And this is where they came from. Go around and do the same to the back. Okay, as it stands, this tent is usable. But as they say on television, but wait, there's more. Okay, what remains is the vestibule and the rear ventilation. And again, if you've ever put up a timber line, you will recognize this process. Now, y'all may have noticed a bit of, let's call it a moment there. What happened was, first thing was, I could not get the front, the vestibule area, to attach to both poles without one of them popping loose like you saw. I was thoroughly convinced it was me, that I had done something wrong. I took the frame apart a couple of times, put it back together a couple of times, and what I finally determined was that two of the poles, it's an old tent, okay, and one of the poles did not go all the way into the other. And it was off by about that much, okay? It lacked about that much from getting in. I swapped them out, swapped one out for another, and went in just fine, and after that everything fell into place. Okay? Worked beautiful. It was as if I had done it that way from the beginning. That just goes to show you how tightly, how closely this tent is designed. You know, most tents you could be off by that much and it would still go up. This, I couldn't get the front, but once it pushed back about 1.5 inches, everything worked just fine. Okay, let's go inside the tent and show you what it looks like there. Got little brass hooks on the side. You can hook the door open. Bug net has zippers inside and out, so does the door. Okay, now, you can see this is a very roomy tent. I believe this is the 4-man version. I could be wrong. It is certainly a good 2-man tent. There is plenty of room for 2 men in this tent and their backpacks. Okay, you can almost stand up. A little ring on the inside here for 2 more back there for hanging a cargo net. There is a zippered rear window, so you can moderate your airflow, which is really important on this old canvas and stuff. Nowhere near as breathable as nylon became. This heavy plastic floor is exactly that. It's heavy plastic. So anyway, there you go. This is, again, in my estimation, the most important, the most significant tent design of the 20th century, because it led to everything after that, including the most commercially successful tent of the 20th century, which was the Eureka Timberline. And if you really study this, you can see that the Timberline is really just a draw tight with 1 ridge instead of 2. Okay, this is a single wall tent. I don't believe it came with a cover. If it did, it was optional. The Timberline differed in that they provided a cover so that they could have that breathable fabric on the outside of the tent, get rid of the moisture of your body. So yeah, now that I've got this thing figured out, I actually wouldn't hesitate using this for a couple of guys on a car camping trip. A little bit too heavy, a little bit too bulky for backpacking. Certainly would be good for any type of alpine camping with support. Okay, you can erect, and that was the reason behind this tent, is it can be erected above tree line. You don't need trees to put this together. Okay, and if you really had to, I suppose you could suspend it from a shear frame that you constructed in the field. Okay, don't know, don't want to try, but I do like this tent. I do think it's a good tent. So we're back to the history of camping gear. I'm glad. I hope you're glad. At the end of this video, again, I'm going to be linking to my video on the Timberline tent and on another one that you will find interesting from the History of Camping Gear playlist. Well, there you go. Now, again, I can't stress the fact that I believe this is the most significant tent design of the 20th century heavily enough. There are going to be other people who will tell you it is the dome tent. Respectfully disagree. I believe that this is the first freestanding tent. I stand to be corrected on that. I don't stand on as firmer ground making that claim, but I do think it is the first, or at least one of the earliest, freestanding tents. You notice I didn't put any pegs in the ground. I did not stake that tent down. There are only 2 tent stakes required, and that's at the middle on the sides, so you can pull it out a little bit. But you don't need it. And that's because it is designed for alpine use, for mountains, for use above tree line. It had a brief and brilliant career as an expedition level alpine tent. It kind of lost its utility when nylon started coming out, and nylon being a lighter weight, less bulky tent made it more made nylon a better material for use in alpine tents above tree line. And by the time nylon came around and Eureka decided to try using it, better designs were coming out for alpine use. So the Draw-Tite didn't last on the market all that long. And patented in 1951, started marketing in the early 60s, and by the 1970s, the Draw-Tite, what Draw-Tites were being sold for family camping. Overtaken by designs like Eureka's Mount Katahdin and of course, the Timberline tent, as well as some of the dome tents and other tents by Jerry Cunningham and a bunch of other guys that we talk about here on the history of camping gear. But again, I'm very glad I've got this tent. I'm very glad that at public events I can set this tent up next to a Eureka Timberline. And there will be people younger than I in their 40s, late 30s and 40s, who will remember sleeping in the Timberline as Boy Scouts. And we can use the similarity between it and the Draw-Tite to kind of draw them in to study and interest in the history of camping gear. And we really need more people studying the history of camping gear than just some old fart in Texas. Glad you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed the video. We've got some more coming. Got some more 1930s living history stuff coming. And right now I'm going to start preparing to go to Bannerman's Camp in the Wild. So we'll see you down the trail.